This happened 3 years ago, and it's the reason I never leave my daughter alone upstairs anymore. At the time, she was 5 years old. It was just the two of us that weekend, because my wife was visiting her parents out of state. Our house wasn't old or creepy. We'd only lived there for about a year. It was in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Kids rode their bikes in the street, and people left their garage doors open while doing yard work. I never imagined anything like this could happen there. That Saturday evening was completely normal. We ordered pizza, watched an animated movie, and built a blanket fort in the living room. Around 9 o'clock, I carried my daughter upstairs because she had fallen asleep on the couch. I tucked her into bed, turned on her small nightlight, kissed her forehead, and quietly closed the bedroom door. Then, I went downstairs to clean the kitchen. About 20 minutes later, I heard her voice. "Daddy?" It came from upstairs. I smiled. "What is it?" No answer. I figured she'd gone back to sleep. A few minutes later, I heard her again. "Daddy?" This time, it sounded softer. I climbed the stairs and opened her bedroom door. She was asleep, completely asleep. I stood there for several seconds just watching her breathe. Maybe I'd imagined it. I turned around and went back downstairs. Not even 5 minutes later, I heard footsteps above me. Small, slow footsteps. I assumed she'd gotten out of bed. "Daddy?" I looked toward the staircase. Nobody came down. I walked upstairs again. Her bedroom door was still closed. I opened it. She hadn't moved. She was still asleep exactly as I'd left her. That gave me an uneasy feeling I couldn't explain. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The guest room. Empty. Every window upstairs was locked. I told myself old houses make strange noises, even though ours wasn't old. I went back downstairs. Around 10:30, I was sitting on the couch when my daughter suddenly screamed. Not a frightened scream, a panicked one. I ran upstairs 2 steps at a time. She was sitting upright in bed, crying. Before I could ask what happened, she pointed toward her closet. "Daddy." Someone opened it. I looked. The closet door was halfway open. I was certain I'd closed it earlier. Trying to stay calm, I walked over and pulled it open. Nothing. Just clothes, toys, storage boxes. I checked underneath the bed too. Nothing. I hugged her and told her she'd had a bad dream. She eventually calmed down, but she didn't want me to leave the room, so I stayed. She fell asleep holding my hand. Around midnight, I carefully stood up and walked toward the bedroom door. That's when I heard it. A faint creak. Not from inside her room, from the hallway. I opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark, except for the night light near the stairs. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed the attic hatch. It was slightly open, only a few inches. I stopped. I knew I had locked that hatch months earlier because we never used the attic. Slowly, I grabbed a flashlight from the hallway closet. I shined it upward. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, a face. Just for a split second. Someone pulled back into the darkness. My body reacted before my brain did. I grabbed my daughter, ran into the bedroom, locked the door, and called 911. The dispatcher kept me talking while officers were on the way. I pushed the dresser against the bedroom door even though I knew it wouldn't stop someone for long. For the next few minutes, there wasn't a single sound. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. Then came loud knocking downstairs. "Police!" A few moments later, officers cleared the house. They searched the attic with flashlights. Hidden behind insulation, they found a man. He'd apparently entered through a loose attic vent, connected to the garage roof several days earlier. He had food wrappers, bottled water, a sleeping bag, and a backpack. Investigators believed he'd been coming down into the house late at night after we were asleep. Nothing valuable had been stolen. Instead, he had taken small things: food, batteries, a flashlight, things we probably wouldn't notice immediately. One officer later told me something that still makes my stomach turn. The man admitted he avoided making noise because of my daughter. He knew children notice things adults ignore. When I think back now, I remember all the little signs we'd brushed off over the previous week. Cabinet doors left open, a missing loaf of bread, footprints in the garage that I blamed on muddy shoes, our dog staring at the ceiling late at night. Every clue had been there. I just explained each one away. We moved out within 2 weeks. My daughter is older now. She barely remembers that night. But sometimes she'll ask me why I still check every closet, every bedroom, and every lock before we go to sleep. I always tell her it's just a habit. The truth is different. Because once, someone lived above our heads for days, and we never knew until he was only a few feet away. I was 19 when this happened. It was during my first semester of college, and I had just moved into a small apartment. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a balcony that overlooked the parking lot. Most nights, my roommate worked the closing shift at a restaurant, so I spent a lot of evenings alone. I actually enjoyed it. I'd cook dinner, finish assignments, and watch TV until she got home around midnight. It became my routine. One Thursday evening, she texted me, "Running late. Probably won't be home until after 1." I replied with a thumbs up and went back to studying. Around 9 o'clock, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud. Just knock, knock, knock. I looked through the people. Nobody. I opened the door anyway. The hallway was empty. I figured some kids had been playing around and closed the door. About 20 minutes later, the same 3 knocks, exactly the same rhythm. I checked again. Still no one. This time I didn't open the door. Instead, I looked through the living room window toward the parking lot. Everything looked normal. A few cars, a street light. Nothing unusual. I laughed to myself and figured someone was messing with the apartments. I put my headphones back on. A little after 10, my phone rang. It was my roommate. "You home?" "Yeah." "Don't answer the door tonight." I laughed. "Why?" "There was a guy walking around the parking lot when I left for work. He kept trying apartment doors." That wasn't funny anymore. I locked the deadbolt, checked every window, and turned off the TV. The apartment suddenly felt much quieter than usual. A few minutes passed. Nothing. Then, 3 knocks. This time they came from the balcony window. I froze. My apartment was on the 2nd floor. No one should have been standing outside that window. I slowly pulled back the curtain. Nothing. The balcony was empty. I stepped closer. That's when I noticed the chair on the balcony had moved. I never used it. I certainly hadn't moved it. Trying to stay calm, I slid the balcony door lock into place. Then, I noticed something else. A muddy footprint, right outside the glass. Someone had been standing there. I backed away from the window and called my roommate. She told me to call the police immediately. I almost did. But then, I convinced myself it wasn't enough. Maybe someone from another balcony had stepped over. Maybe I was overreacting. I hate that I talked myself out of it. About 30 minutes later, I was in the kitchen making tea. That's when I heard a soft metallic sound, like someone slowly turning a doorknob. I looked toward the front door. The handle moved very slowly. Someone was trying it. The deadbolt stopped it. The handle returned to its normal position. Then, silence. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. I grabbed the largest kitchen knife I owned and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone while dialing 911. The dispatcher stayed on the line. She told me officers were only a few minutes away. Then she asked, "Are you certain no one else is inside the apartment?" I looked toward the bathroom door. I think so. Before I could say anything else, I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside, slow, careful, walking across the living room floor. I held my breath. One step, another, then complete silence. Whoever it was had stopped moving. I couldn't hear anything. Not breathing, not walking, nothing. The dispatcher kept talking. "Stay where you are. Officers are almost there." Then I heard my apartment door slam shut. A few seconds later came voices. "Police!" I opened the bathroom door. 2 officers were clearing each room with flashlights. One of them walked onto the balcony. The other looked behind my couch. Then he stopped. There was a narrow storage closet built into the wall beside the front entrance. The door was slightly open. The officer pulled it open the rest of the way. Inside was a man. He had been crouching there in complete silence. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't drunk. According to the police, he had been breaking into apartment buildings for weeks, hiding inside empty units or waiting for residents to leave. They believed he slipped into my apartment earlier that evening when I opened the door after the first knock. He hid in the storage closet for nearly 2 hours while I studied, cooked dinner, and talked on the phone. When he realized I had called the police, he tried to leave, but the officers arrived before he could get away. I moved out less than a month later. People still ask why I never answer unexpected knocks at my door. The truth is, it's not because I'm afraid of who's outside. It's because once I opened the door for just a few seconds, and someone came in without me ever noticing. Though I was 23 when this happened. At the time, I rented a small 1-bedroom house on the edge of town. It wasn't isolated, but it wasn't crowded either. There were a few houses nearby. Though everyone mostly kept to themselves, it felt like the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever happened. I worked at a hardware store, usually. A week later, my younger sister Emily stopped by with her 6-year-old son, Noah. She was dropping off homemade soup because she'd heard I'd been working overtime. While she was in the kitchen, Noah wandered toward the hallway. A minute later, he came back. He looked nervous. "Who's that man?" I looked up from my phone. "What man?" "The man in your room." Emily smiled. "Noah, stop trying to scare your uncle." "I'm not." "Standing by the closet." I laughed. "Nobody's here, buddy." To prove it, I walked into the bedroom. Empty. Closet empty. Bathroom empty. Nothing. Noah didn't say another word, but the entire visit, he refused to go. He stared toward the hallway, completely still. Then he started growling. I'd never heard him growl before, not once. I muted the TV. The house became completely silent, except a tiny sound, like a floorboard, settling. I waited. Nothing else. It's an old house, I told myself. I unmuted the movie. A few minutes later, another creak, this time from the bedroom. I walked down the hallway, turned on the light. Nothing. Every window was locked. Every door was locked. I even checked the closets. Nothing. I went back to the couch, feeling ridiculous. Over the next several days, the strange things continued. A towel I hadn't used was damp. A cereal box had moved shelves. My bathroom mirror had fingerprints on it, after I had cleaned it the day before. Each time, I convinced myself there had to be a normal explanation. Stress, forgetfulness, distraction. Then Friday came. I finished work early, around 4 in the afternoon. I drove home. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. The bathroom curtain moved, just slightly, like someone had stepped away from the window. I froze. Maybe it was the breeze. Except the bathroom window didn't open. I sat in my car for almost a minute. Eventually, I laughed at myself. I unlocked the front door. The house was quiet. Everything looked normal.